Thank you very much.
Made grid reliability and security a key focus of this administration. Is Democrat states, radical leftist states, enacting policies and enacting an agenda.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Great job. He went to Harvard when Harvard was good. It was a while ago.
Okay, so get ready, because what I'm about to tell you is going to make your blood boil or make you cheer, depending on where you stand politically. But either way, this is huge, and it's going to dominate the conversation about energy policy and climate and America's future for weeks to come. The Trump administration just announced that they're planning to spend $725 million of taxpayer money to boost coal power in America. That's right, coal, the energy source that most of the developed world is moving away from as fast as possible. The fuel that's directly linked to pollution and respiratory disease and environmental destruction. Trump is taking $750 million and dumping it into keeping coal alive. And the backlash has been absolutely massive. We're talking about scientists losing their minds, climate advocates staging protests, business leaders questioning the economic logic, and regular Americans asking why their tax dollars are going to prop up a dying industry instead of investing in the future. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
I'm at the Rawhide Energy Station, a coal and gas-fired power plant in northern Colorado. The Trump administration has been helping the U.S. coal mining industry. Power plants from the West Coast to the Deep South use this coal for fuel, but they've been burning less and less of it over the past decade, and that trend is likely to continue. Dozens of power plants are scheduled to stop burning coal altogether over the next several years. That includes Rawhide, which is scheduled to stop burning coal in 2029. The plant will continue running using gas for fuel. Gas is cheaper and cleaner burning. But the fate of the coal mines being helped by Trump is far less certain.
The announcement came on November 8th in an official press release. The Trump administration laid out plans to invest $725 million into coal-fired power plants. Some of that money is going to support new coal plant construction. Yes, they're actually building new coal plants in 2025 when the rest of the world is shutting theirs down, and the rest of the money is going to keep existing coal facilities running that would otherwise close because they can't compete economically with cheaper, cleaner alternatives like natural gas and renewables. Think about that for a second. These coal plants are so economically unviable that they would shut down on their own, but Trump is using taxpayer money to artificially keep them alive. That's not free market capitalism. That's government picking winners and losers. And the loser in this case is the American taxpayer and the American environment. Now Trump and his allies are defending this by saying coal is necessary for reliable power. U.S. Secretary of Energy Chris Wright, who by the way previously worked in the fossil fuel industry, which tells you everything you need to know about his objectivity here, stated that these projects will keep coal plants operating and ensure America has reliable power. But here's the thing, that's a false choice. You don't need coal for reliable power. Countries all over the world are generating huge percentages of their energy from renewables, and they're doing fine. In fact, multiple nations now generate 100% of their energy from renewable sources. 100%. No coal, no oil, no natural gas, just clean renewable energy. And their lights stay on. Their economies function. Their power grids are reliable. So this whole argument that we need coal for reliability is garbage. It's a talking point designed to justify a handout to coal companies. The health impacts of coal are well documented and absolutely devastating. Coal-fired power plants release pollutants that cause respiratory diseases, heart attacks, cancer, and premature death. We're not talking about minor inconveniences here. We're talking about people dying because they breathe air polluted by coal plants. The American Lung Association and countless other health organizations have been sounding the alarm about coal pollution for decades. And despite all that evidence, Trump is now spending $725 million to make the problem worse, to pump more pollution into the air, to cause more heart attacks and asthma attacks and cancer cases. That's what this money is going to do. It's going to literally kill Americans. And Trump is framing it as a good thing because it keeps coal miners employed and coal companies profitable. Climate experts are absolutely blasting this decision as wasteful and dangerous. They're pointing out that the U.S. is already falling behind China and Europe on clean energy transition, while other countries are investing billions into solar and wind and battery storage and electric vehicles. America is pouring money into coal. That's like investing in typewriters when everyone else is building computers. It's backward looking, it's short-sighted, and it's going to leave America economically disadvantaged in the long run because the future of energy is renewable. The jobs of the future are in clean tech. The industries that are going to dominate in 20 or 30 years are the ones investing in sustainable technologies now. And Trump is betting against all of that by doubling down on coal. The political implications of this are massive. Democrats and progressive activists are using this as proof that Trump doesn't care about climate change or public health or America's economic competitiveness. They're saying this is a payback to coal industry donors. They're framing it as corruption and backwards thinking. And honestly, it's hard to argue with that framing because the facts support it. Coal is dying because it's expensive and dirty and obsolete. The only reason to keep it alive with taxpayer subsidies is if you're getting something in return from the coal industry, whether that's campaign donations or personal financial benefits or political support. Something is motivating this decision beyond sound policy. Trump supporters see this completely differently, of course. They're celebrating this as keeping promises to coal country. They're saying Trump is standing up for American workers in coal mining regions who've been left behind by the green energy transition. They're framing this as resistance against what they see as radical climate policies that would destroy American jobs and sovereignty. And for voters in coal-producing states, this plays really well. They don't care about climate science or renewable energy transitions. They care about whether they have jobs. They care about whether their communities survive. And Trump is telling them he's fighting for them while Democrats are trying to kill their way of life. That message resonates in coal country, even if it's economically and environmentally insane. So we've got this massive fight brewing over $725 million. And what it represents, is it smart investment in reliable energy in American jobs? Or is it wasteful, corrupt spending that props up a dying, polluting industry while the rest of the world moves forward? There's no middle ground on this. There's no compromise position. You either think coal deserves this money or you think it's an outrage. And that divide is going to play out in public debates, in political campaigns, and policy fights for a long time to come. All right, so let's dig into the details here because there's so much more to this story than just the headline number of $725 million. First, we need to understand what this money is actually going to do. According to the announcement, some of it will support new coal plant construction. Now that's wild because virtually no one is building new coal plants anymore. The economics don't work. Coal plants are expensive to build. They're expensive to operate. They can't compete with natural gas, which is cheaper. They can't compete with renewables, which are getting cheaper every year. So the only way new coal plants get built is if the government subsidizes them heavily. And that's exactly what Trump is doing. He's taking taxpayer money and using it to make economically unviable projects viable. That's corporate welfare. That's the government picking winners in the market. And it's being done not because coal is the best option, but because Trump has political reasons for wanting to boost coal. The rest of the money is going to keep existing coal plants running that would otherwise shut down. And this is really important to understand. These plants are closing not because of government regulations or environmental activists or democratic policies. They're closing because they're losing money. They can't compete. Power companies are choosing to shut them down because it's cheaper to replace them with natural gas or renewables or buy power from other sources. That's the free market at work. But Trump is interfering with market forces by subsidizing these uncompetitive plants. He's artificially extending their lifespan, and the cost of that intervention is being paid by taxpayers while the benefits go to coal companies and their shareholders. Now let's talk about Chris Wright, the Secretary of Energy, because his role in this is significant. Wright comes from the fossil fuel industry. He's made his career in oil and gas. He has financial ties to companies that benefit from policies that favor fossil fuels over renewables. So when he's making statements about how these coal projects will ensure reliable power, you have to consider his conflicts of interest. He's not a neutral expert. He's someone with a vested interest in promoting fossil fuels, and that raises serious questions about whether this $725 million investment is based on sound energy policy or whether it's based on industry influence and financial self-interest. The claim that coal is necessary for reliable power deserves serious scrutiny because it's mostly false. Coal has traditionally been viewed as a baseload power source, meaning it runs continuously and provides steady, predictable electricity. But that advantage has diminished as technology has advanced. Natural gas plants can ramp up and down quickly to meet changing demand. Battery storage is becoming more affordable and effective at smoothing out the variability of solar and wind. Grid management technologies are getting better at integrating different power sources, so the reliability argument for coal is much weaker than it used to be. And even if you accept that we need some baseload power, that doesn't mean it has to be coal. Nuclear power provides baseload without the emissions. Hydroelectric provides baseload in many regions. There are alternatives that don't involve propping up a dying, polluting industry. The international comparison is really damning for Trump's coal push. Multiple countries are now getting huge percentages of their electricity from renewables. Costa Rica regularly hits 100% renewable energy. Iceland and Norway get nearly all their power from hydro and geothermal. Germany and Denmark have massively expanded wind and solar. China, despite also burning a lot of coal, is the world leader in renewable energy investment and capacity. They're building solar and wind faster than any other country. They're manufacturing electric vehicles at scale. They see clean energy as the future, and they're positioning themselves to dominate those industries. Meanwhile, America under Trump is investing in coal. That's not how you win the economic competition of the 21st century. That's how you fall behind. The health costs of coal are staggering and well documented. Coal plants emit sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, particulate matter, mercury, and other pollutants. These emissions cause respiratory diseases like asthma and COPD. They cause cardiovascular problems. They cause cancer. The research on this is overwhelming and consistent. People who live near coal plants have higher rates of health problems. Children exposed to coal pollution have higher rates of asthma. Pregnant women exposed to coal pollution have higher rates of complications. This isn't theoretical or debatable. This is established medical fact, and Trump is choosing to increase that health burden by keeping coal plants running and building new ones. The $725 million investment will lead directly to increased pollution, which will lead directly to increased disease and death. That's not hyperbole. That's cause and effect. There's also the climate impact, which cannot be ignored even though Trump and his allies try to dismiss it. Coal is the dirtiest fossil fuel in terms of carbon emissions per unit of energy produced. Burning coal releases massive amounts of CO2 into the atmosphere, which drives climate change. Climate change is already causing extreme weather events, rising sea levels, agricultural disruption, and countless other problems. And it's going to get worse. The scientific consensus on this is overwhelming. Virtually every credible scientific organization in the world agrees that climate change is real, human-caused, and dangerous. And the solution requires rapidly reducing carbon emissions, which means moving away from coal as fast as possible. But Trump is doing the opposite. He's doubling down on coal. He's ensuring that America's carbon emissions stay higher than they need to be, and that makes climate change worse for everyone on the planet. The economic argument against coal investment is strong even if you don't care about environment or health. Renewable energy is now cheaper than coal in most markets. Solar and wind prices have dropped dramatically over the past decade. Battery storage costs are falling. The technology is getting better and more efficient. So from a pure economic standpoint, investing in renewables makes more sense than investing in coal. You get cheaper electricity. You create more jobs. The solar and wind industries employ more people than coal. You position your economy for future growth rather than tying it to a declining industry. But Trump is ignoring all of that economic logic because he's committed to coal for political reasons. Let's talk about the politics of coal, because that's really what this is about. Trump made promises to coal miners during his campaigns. He told them he would bring back coal jobs and make the industry great again. That was always unrealistic because coal's decline is driven by economics, not politics. But Trump made the promises anyway, and his political brand in coal country is tied to those promises. So now he's spending $725 million to try to make good on promises that never made economic sense. He's propping up an industry that the market has decided should shrink, and he's doing it because he needs political support from coal-producing regions, not because it's good policy. The comparison to Biden and Obama's energy policies is stark. The Obama administration invested heavily in clean energy through programs like the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. They supported solar and wind development. They implemented fuel efficiency standards. They joined the Paris Climate Agreement. And during that time, renewable energy capacity expanded rapidly and costs dropped dramatically. Biden continued that trajectory with the Inflation Reduction Act, which included massive investments in clean energy. These policies were forward-looking. They recognized that the future of energy is renewable, and they position America to compete in that future. Trump is reversing all of that progress. He's taking America backwards while the rest of the world moves forward. The reaction from business leaders has been mixed, but many are critical. Companies that have invested in renewables see Trump's coal subsidies as bad policy. Tech companies that have committed to 100% renewable energy are frustrated. Utility companies that have been transitioning away from coal are confused about why the government is trying to preserve something the market is eliminating. But coal companies obviously love this policy. They're getting a huge handout. They're getting taxpayer money to prop up their failing business model. For them, this is great. But for the broader business community and for consumers who pay electricity bills and taxes, this is waste. Environmental groups are organizing protests and campaigns against this coal investment. They're calling it exactly what it is, a massive step backward on climate and clean energy. They're mobilizing voters. They're planning to make this a major issue in upcoming elections. They see this as Trump brazenly prioritizing fossil fuel profits over public health and environmental protection, and they're going to fight it with everything they've got. Whether that opposition will be effective in stopping the spending or changing policy remains to be seen, but it's definitely going to be loud and visible. There's also the question of whether this coal investment will even achieve what Trump claims. Will it actually create jobs? Maybe a few temporary construction jobs for building new plants. But coal employment has been declining for decades, and this $725 million isn't going to reverse that trend. The jobs aren't coming back because coal mining is increasingly automated. The jobs aren't coming back because coal plants need fewer workers than they used to. So even as a jobs program, this is ineffective. It's a lot of money for very little employment impact. If Trump really wanted to help coal country workers, he'd invest in retraining programs and economic development initiatives that help those communities transition to new industries. But that would mean admitting coal is dying, and Trump won't do that. So let's break down what happens next and what this coal investment means for energy policy, for the environment, for politics, and for America's economic future. First, there's going to be legal challenges. Environmental groups are almost certainly going to sue to try to block this spending. They'll argue it violates environmental laws. They'll argue the administration didn't properly assess the environmental impacts. They'll argue the money is being spent in ways that contradict the government's own climate commitments. Whether those lawsuits succeed is uncertain, but they'll at least delay implementation and keep this issue in the courts and in the news. Congress might also push back depending on how the spending is structured. If it requires congressional approval for appropriations, then there could be legislative fights. Democrats will obviously oppose it. Some moderate Republicans might have concerns, especially those from districts that care about climate issues. But if Trump has the authority to allocate this money without congressional approval, then the legislative path to stopping it is much harder. The details of how this $725 million is being spent and where the money is coming from matter a lot in terms of what opposition can do to block it. State governments are going to be affected by this in different ways. States that still have significant coal industries, like Wyoming and West Virginia, will probably support the investment. They'll see it as helping their economies and their workers. But states that have aggressively pursued clean energy, like California and New York, are going to be furious. They'll see this as the federal government working against their climate goals. And there could be conflicts between state policies that favor renewables and federal policies that favor coal. That tension between state and federal energy policy is going to create all kinds of complications. The utilities and power companies that own coal plants are watching this very carefully. Some will take the money and keep their plants running longer than they otherwise would, but others have already made commitments to transition away from coal, and they're not going to reverse those plans even with federal subsidies, because they know coal's economic disadvantage is only going to get worse over time. So this $725 million might extend the life of some coal plants, but it's not going to fundamentally change the industry's trajectory. Coal is still going to decline. It's just going to decline a little slower, thanks to this taxpayer-funded life support. For workers in coal communities, this is complicated. On one hand, any investment that preserves jobs in the short term is going to be welcome. These are people whose livelihoods depend on coal. They're not abstract policy debates to them. They're paychecks and mortgages, and ability to feed their families. So when Trump says he's investing in coal, they hear him saying he's fighting for them. But on the other hand, this is short-term thinking that doesn't solve the underlying problem. Coal is declining. Those jobs are going away eventually, whether Trump props up the industry for a few more years or not. What these workers really need is support for transitioning to new industries. They need job training. They need economic development in their communities. They need a real plan for the future, not a temporary subsidy that delays the inevitable. The environmental consequences of this coal investment are going to be significant. More coal burning means more air pollution, more carbon emissions, more mercury in the environment, more acid rain, more of all the problems associated with coal, and those impacts are going to be felt for decades. The pollution from coal plants built or extended today will affect public health and the environment long after the political battles over this spending are forgotten. That's the real cost of this policy, not just $725 million in taxpayer money, but the long-term damage to health and environment. The international implications are also worth considering. America's standing in global climate negotiations is damaged when the administration is actively investing in coal. How can the U.S. credibly push other countries to reduce emissions and transition to clean energy when we're doing the opposite? Other countries look at policies like this, coal investment, and see hypocrisy. They see America saying, do as I say, not as I do, and that undermines diplomatic efforts on climate and energy. It makes it harder to build the international cooperation needed to address climate change. Because why should China or India or Brazil make sacrifices if America won't? The political fight over this spending is going to intensify as we get closer to elections. Democrats are going to use this as a campaign issue. They're going to say Trump is wasting taxpayer money. They're going to say he's prioritizing coal company profits over public health. They're going to say he's leaving America behind in the clean energy transition. And those arguments are going to resonate with a lot of voters, especially younger voters who care about climate. But in coal country, Trump's support for coal is going to be a political asset. It's going to reinforce loyalty among voters who feel abandoned by Democrats and see Trump as the only one fighting for them. So this issue is going to deepen political divides rather than creating any consensus. For the renewable energy industry, this coal investment is frustrating, but probably not devastating. The economic trends favor renewables regardless of what Trump does. Solar and wind are getting cheaper. Battery storage is improving. Electric vehicles are becoming mainstream. Corporate commitments to renewable energy are growing. None of that is going to reverse. Because Trump spent $725 million on coal, it might slow the transition slightly, but it's not going to stop it. The market forces and technological progress pushing toward clean energy are too strong to be derailed by one policy decision, no matter how bad that decision is. There's also the question of precedent. If Trump can spend $725 million to prop up coal, what's to stop future subsidies for other failing industries? Do we bail out every industry that's declining because of market forces? Do taxpayers have to subsidize businesses that can't compete? That's a dangerous road to go down. It creates expectations that the government will step in to preserve industries and jobs rather than helping people adapt to economic change. And that's not sustainable. The economy has to evolve. Industries rise and fall. The government's role should be helping workers and communities navigate those transitions, not pretending the transitions aren't happening. What should happen instead of this coal investment? Well, the obvious answer is the $725 million should go to clean energy. It should support solar and wind development. It should fund battery storage and grid modernization. It should help coal communities transition to new industries through job training and economic development. That would be forward-looking. That would position America for the future rather than trying to preserve the past. But that's not what Trump is doing. He's choosing coal because of politics, not because it makes sense. The long-term consequences of this decision are going to extend well beyond Trump's time in office. Coal plants built or extended today will operate for decades. The emissions from those plants will continue to impact climate and health for generations. The opportunity cost of spending this money on coal rather than clean energy will compound over time. And the message this sends, that America is willing to sacrifice environmental and health concerns to preserve a declining industry, will shape how other countries and future administrations approach energy policy. So this $725 million is about much more than just the immediate spending. It's about the direction America is heading and what we're willing to prioritize. For Americans watching all of this unfold, the question is what can be done about it. Voting is obviously the most direct way to influence policy. Supporting candidates who prioritize clean energy over coal, holding elected officials accountable for their environmental and health decisions. But beyond voting, there's also activism, supporting environmental organizations that are fighting these policies, participating in protests and campaigns, making your voice heard, because policy changes don't happen in a vacuum. They happen when enough people demand change and refuse to accept destructive policies. The bottom line is this: Trump is spending $725 million to boost coal at a time when the rest of the world is moving away from it as fast as possible. The decision is bad for the environment, it's bad for public health, it's bad for America's economic competitiveness, it's bad for our international standing. The only people who benefit are coal companies and Trump's political standing in coal country. Everyone else pays the cost. That's what this is really about. And whether Americans will accept that or demand better is the question that's going to be answered through protests and political battles and eventually elections. This isn't just a policy debate. It's a fight about what kind of country America is going to be and what kind of future we're building. And right now, Trump is betting on the past rather than investing in the future.